What's going on, guys? Patrick here from Super Clean Auto Detailing out here in Teaneck, New Jersey. And today we're going to be talking about paint decon. So a good way to decontaminate your paint. And there's several different methods to the madness, right? So one of the most common is the clay bar. This is starting to get considered a bit old school, but people know what clay bars are. So they're available in lots of different levels of, I guess we'll call it, aggression, right? So this is a fine grade one here from MacShine, and this is something called a heavy grade. And there's differences here, without a doubt. There's differences in the grade, but then there's also things like towels. So this one here is from Auto Fiber. This one's from MacShine, and then this one here is from DIY Detail. So we'll get into like what's what, but basically the whole general idea is to rub something over the surface to grab the contaminants that are sitting over the surface. So you might wash your car and yet there's still stuff on the surface. So a simple, believe it or not, but a simple decon can actually make your car shinier. And some of you might be like, what are you talking about? Well, yes, it's very true, because if you have small little contaminants on the paint, when the light hits the paint, it reflects against the little decontaminants, especially on a black car where you won't really see them. And it doesn't make the paint shine as much. So once you remove that from the surface, automatically the paint is going to shine more. So that's just a simple thing that you can do to make a car look slightly glossier without even polishing the car. Now, speaking of polishing the car, if you clay bar the car, if you use one of these, you're going to have to polish the car. You're going to leave something called marring on the paint. Now, marring is similar to scratching. You're not necessarily scratching the paint, you're just essentially leaving marks from the clay bar. So first, how to use clay bars. So the best way to use a clay bar is to use a clay lubricant. Some people just soap down the car and use the soap that's on the car, and then what you basically do is take the bar, just rub it over the surface until you don't feel that grit anymore, right? Like, you'll feel it. It's hard to describe in a video. There's a feeling. You'll feel it. You'll hear it. You'll hear it happening. With a clay towel, what you want to do is actually, you could use soap, simple soap, and I've seen a lot of guys do this, like when they're, especially the detailers out there, they're out in the street and detailing the car, they'll just use simple soap, and after they've washed the car, after they've done the contact wash, they just run one of these over the car, and they'll consider that a decon. That's a little less effective. That's good if you're bundling it together, if you're trying to do this as a business. Now, with one of these, what I would really recommend doing, and by one of these I mean the clay towels, what I would recommend doing is using a good iron remover. Now, iron remover has so many uses, and we'll do a separate video on iron remover. And this is one of my favorites. This is from DIY Detail. And what you would do with the iron remover is, so first you take the towel and you dunk it in your wash bucket, right? So this is after you're done washing the car. You would dunk this in your wash bucket to make it nice and wet. It's lubricated a little bit, right? And then you'd spray one spray of this on this and one spray on the panel. So every panel would get a spray. And as you rub this over the surface, you'll start to feel it, right? You'll start to feel it getting smooth. Every panel, you flip the towel, so you go on to a new side. This is why I like this a little better than this one. Not that you can't flip the sides on this, you absolutely can, but I just like the feel of this. And this is another thing that's hard to kind of understand over the video. When you start flipping this, especially when it's wet, it just becomes just very nice in the hand and very nice to use. The pad isn't really meant to flip, and the way the pad works is essentially this is wet because you've dumped this in the wash bucket, and what'll end up happening is that gives you the padding that you need, so you're not accidentally marring the paint, because you could still mar the paint with this if you're not really paying attention, right? So the idea is to nice flat pressure. Like, you never want to use it like this. Like, this makes no sense, and that's another good thing about the DIY Detail one. It reminds you not to do that, right? So the pad is using the lubricity, obviously, from the iron remover that's on the paint, as well as like there's a huge foam pad in here, so that helps you not to be too rough. So with this, you can't really flip this. So every time you do a panel, you dunk this back in the bucket, spray once on the pad, spray once on the panel, and continue along. So that's essentially how you decon a car. Should you use a clay towel or a clay pad versus a clay bar? it really depends on what you're doing afterwards, right? So if you're going to polish the car, sure, using a clay bar is okay. Some of it's preference, like some people they're old school, they like using this. I think this has its place. It really depends on what you're doing, but like if a car has a lot of overspray on it and things like that, a clay bar is not a bad idea. And then remember, when using this, you got to knead it too. So essentially you take it out of the packaging, you kind of knead it in your hands and make it kind of flat. It's already flat, but you want to make it more flat, and rub it over the surface. And then you could look on the clay pad and you could see the dirt. The problem with the clay bar, the problem with the clay bar is you can't dunk it in the bucket, right? You need to knead it until you don't see that dirt anymore, and the dirt gets trapped inside the bar, and then you kind of continue along. With this, you want to use some kind of lubricant. I wouldn't necessarily recommend an iron remover because it can break this down, right? It's not going to break down the pads. It's kind of made for the pads themselves. I think iron remover is really the way to go. You're going to get the most bang for the buck. But sometimes you could potentially need a clay bar because the clay bar is that much more aggressive. Now, if you're like I said before, if you're polishing the car, it doesn't matter. You could use whatever you want because if you mar the paint, you could polish it out. So it's not a big deal. But most people, I think, are going to probably lean towards these because they likely won't be polishing the paint. Or they just don't want to deal with one of these, right? You don't want to deal with a clay bar. I'm kind of partial when it comes to it. I like these better just because. And I keep up on my car quite a bit, so I don't really run into circumstances where I have to use the clay bar. If I'm doing a detail or something, then it's a little different. Then it really just depends on the situation, what kind of condition the paint's in, what are you intending on doing to it afterwards, right? So, detailing, there's a lot of stuff out there that's a system that you could look at it, right? So I think DIY Detail has a good system. They're like, hey, use this with this and do it that way, right? But the system's going to get you like 95% there, right? That extra 5% is you, because as much as some don't want to admit it, detailing's a bit of it's an art, right? So you're the artist. So you have to sort of figure out what works best for you. So yeah, guys, let me know if you guys have any questions or concerns. Start the conversation down below.